A little while back I made a video on the Colonial Brotherhood Purge and how it was a lot worse than most people thought. We went over assassin hunters that weren't in AC3 or Rogue, ruthless Templar tactics, and things that made the Purge far more brutal than the games put on. But what if I told you there was an assassin purge that was even more brutal, even more strategic, and even more damaging in the long term? This purge succeeded so completely, so quietly that no assassin dared to operate in the capital of the British Empire for over a century. I am of course talking about the British Brotherhood Purge. This purge was so effective that it made the British Templars practically untouchable for over a century. While the Colonial Brotherhood Purge crippled a relatively young brotherhood for about a decade until Connor showed up, the British Brotherhood Purge annihilated a mature, well-established order with experienced leaders like Edward Kenway and WaKy at the helm, and kept them down for generations. So in this video we will explore this forgotten purge. We'll examine the tactics the Templars used, why the assassins couldn't fight back, and how the time period could serve as the perfect setting for a future Assassin's Creed game, from both assassin and Templar perspectives. So with that being said, let's jump right in. Let's start with the state of the British Brotherhood before the Purge. According to Sean Hastings in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, after Edward Kenway settled in London and joined the Brotherhood, the British assassins were thriving and were on the path to be stronger than ever. After all, Edward Kenway was an amazing leader, very experienced and very intelligent. His co-mentor WaKy seemed to be very intelligent too. According to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, WaKy roamed across Europe and searched for pieces of Eden. He also made connections with various regional brotherhoods, so likely ones that were a bit smaller but could be extremely helpful. Edward, on the other hand, used his charm to make connections around the city. The assassins had connections to both high society and the criminal underworld. Under the two mentors, the British assassins grew and were very effective for a while, but the seeds of destruction were already planted. Enter Reginald Birch. Birch was very intelligent, likely even smarter than Edward and WaKy, and became indispensable to Edward's work. Reginald Birch may be the single most dangerous Templar in Assassin's Creed history. He was a master strategist, and unlike most Templars, he didn't rely on brute force. He used his patience, manipulation, and intelligence. And Birch embedded himself deeply in Edward Kenway's life. For over a decade, he was one of Edward Kenway's most trusted allies, handling property, business ventures, and likely interfacing with assassin-friendly associates. But Birch had a hidden motive. He wanted Edward Kenway's journal, specifically his research on the Isu. So in 1735, Birch organized an attack on the Kenway household to get Edward's journal. This attack killed Edward Kenway, and Birch adopted Haytham Kenway. It's also worth mentioning that Birch specifically used non-Templar mercenaries to hide any Templar involvement. After this, WaKy would take up leadership of the order, where it would steadily decline due to Edward's absence. In 1754, Birch would task Haytham with killing WaKy, which is the prologue of Assassin's Creed 3. After his death, the assassins would be kicked out of London for over a century. Now, there's not a lot of solid information about how the assassins were dealt with. However, there are clues in the novels, and based on the data we have, we can piece a lot of it together. After all, this Brotherhood Purge literally connects to Assassin's Creed Rogue. We know from Assassin's Creed Rogue that the British Templars were already experienced in killing assassins by the time the Colonial Purge began, and this is because they refined their methods during the British Purge. Alright, so now we are going to go over how the Templars would have likely dealt with the British assassins. Unlike their colonial counterparts, the British assassins weren't breaking the tenets of the Creed, which would make it harder for the Templars. The Templars didn't wage an open war. There were no citywide conflicts. No assassin flags were torn down in the streets. This was a lot more silent and strategic. They were able to organize the assassination of every assassin and every ally they had. This is also because the assassins didn't even know who was responsible half the time. They couldn't fight back. So how did the Templars do it? First of all, they would use Reginald Birch's knowledge on the assassins. Due to his close role to Edward Kenway, he likely knew a lot of Edward's acquaintances and connections. Because of this, the Templars would know where to start looking to begin the purge. Also, I do want to mention this. The British Templars are experts at making things seem like accidents or hiding their involvement. This is heavily built on in the novels, especially Assassin's Creed Forsaken and Assassin's Creed Underworld. Enemies of the Templars, witnesses, witnesses or assassin-affiliated individuals would go missing or die from very common circumstances. For example, the Templars would fake a mugging, a theft gone wrong, or an accident. The police who investigated these deaths would shake it off and not look too deeply into it. They were really good at that, and they did that multiple times in the novels. Also, they were really good at hiding their own members. After all, Reginald Birch, the damn Grand Master, was one of Edward Kenway's best friends and business affiliates. This meant that the assassins did not know who to target, unlike other brotherhoods. They'd be taking losses left, right, and center and not even know who was responsible. The Templars would likely purge assassins very differently. Instead of marching and killing assassins, cutting down their flags and destroying their supplies, the British assassins would stage accidents. So for example, maybe an assassin is walking down the street and a scaffolding falls on them. Maybe an assassin is run over by a speeding carriage. Maybe an assassin that wanders down the wrong alley gets robbed. The Templars could even frame other assassins for their murders. After all, assassins work together, and what better suspect than their shady friend that always wears a hood? Thanks to Assassin's Creed Syndicate's database, we know the assassins at the time had connections to the criminal underworld, which could be used against them if done properly. We know the Templars had connections to law enforcement and the government. Haytham Kenway and Shay Cormac, for example, don't have any notoriety from the British despite the crazy stuff both of them do. The Templars could weaponize this and use it against the assassins who were affiliated with criminals. Now, at this point, the assassins are struggling. The Templars would now use this as an opportunity to strengthen themselves. They would use the King's Guard or soldiers to raid assassin safe houses that they wouldn't be able to reach normally. They'd also set up Templar strongholds that would play a huge role long term. If they do the same thing that we see in other games, where they set up their hideouts in the same locations where the assassins used to be, this would be a huge moral blow to the assassins. Not to mention the Templars had so many political connections. For example, the King George II, was affiliated with the Templars. This meant that the few remaining allies the British assassins had in politics could be eliminated or discredited. Even the smaller allies, for example, if assassins had small businesses that were allied with them, such as blacksmiths, smugglers, or even properties, could be bought or bribed by the Templars. After all, they had an endless supply of money at this point. Now, what about the assassins that would try to get away or regroup with others? After all, we know Miko had allied the British Brotherhood with a lot of regional brotherhoods. This is where the British Empire's connections would come into play. The British Empire at the time was the global superpower and had influence everywhere, so the assassins who would try to escape would have a hard time. The Templars could use, for example, East India Company's global network to track down and eliminate any threats. Assassin messages would be intercepted, trading ports would be watched, and fleeing assassins would be eliminated. With all of this, the British assassins would be completely destroyed. Perhaps the final nail in the Brotherhood's coffin was the rise of Haytham Kenway. The son of Edward, once an assassin in training, was now a Templar Grand Master. It wasn't just that the Templars won, it's that they turned one of the Brotherhood's greatest families against them. Edward Kenway's own son was himself a Templar. If this isn't a motivation killer for the assassins, I don't know what else would be. By the time of Assassin's Creed Syndicate and its tie-in novel Assassin's Creed Underworld, the Templars have full control of London, and there is not a single assassin operating in the city except Ethan Fry and George Westhouse, obviously before Jacob and Evie. We know how Syndicate played out. Jacob and Evie were very effective at taking back London, but this can probably be explained by Crawford Starrick not being a great leader and the fact that the Templars had not fought assassins for over a century, meaning when the assassins showed up, they were caught off guard. I want to briefly go over Assassin's Creed Underworld, and I am not a huge die-hard fan of this book. It's not bad, but I think it's one of the more unnecessary Assassin's Creed books, but it does a good job at detailing how deadly and far-reaching the British Templars had become, and keep in mind they'd have probably been more effective under Reginald Birch. Henry Green, the Indian assassin we see in Syndicate, was sent on an undercover mission where he had to infiltrate the Templars and try to get information on a piece of Eden, which is the same piece of Eden that blows up at the beginning of Syndicate. He goes undercover and sees how much influence the Templars have. They have connections everywhere. Politicians, bankers, bankers, police, industrialists, and more. They even go to India and kill some of Henry's friends just because they suspected that Henry might have been an assassin, and they do that pretty easily. The British Templars during the Industrial Revolution were still great at covering their crimes. They'd have their enemies killed and frame it on their other enemies multiple times. Hell, they even tried framing Henry Green himself. However, I'm not going to go over the entire book, but if you're interested in an undercover assassin story, I'd check it out. Across the games and novels, it's clear that the British Templars during the Kenway era stood out. Compared to other Templar factions, their level of training and discipline was leagues above. Most of them had combat experience, military backgrounds, and elite education. Even if the assassins knew who they were targeting, actually taking them down would be a whole different story. Miko, mentor of the British Brotherhood, sent Achilles a warning about how dangerous this order was. And from what we know, Achilles did not take his warning seriously, and look how that turned out. It's also likely the British Templars had their own assassin hunters, similar to the ones from the Colonial Brotherhood Purge. If you want to know more about the Colonial Brotherhood Purge's assassin hunters, check out my video where I break it down. But the hunters in London would have operated very differently. Sure, they'd still be highly trained in both melee and ranged combat, but instead of being rogue mercenaries or violent thugs, they'd have legal authority and corporate banking. In the colonies, the chaos of the American frontier gave the Templars plenty of cover. Using this, the Templars could effectively eliminate the assassins without raising too much suspicion, maybe hiding it behind military campaigns, skirmishes, and mercenary attacks. We also know the American frontier was total chaos, so if assassins were killed in the open, the Templars could hide their involvement fairly easily. No one is going to question why a cabin caught on fire or a convoy exploded. But in Britain, things were different. There was no revolution or war to hide their work. So these hunters would either have to be incredibly stealthy or work directly within the system. And while both are cool in theory, the more logical scenario would be the latter. Maybe even posing as law enforcement, East India Company's agents, or members of the Crown's inner circle. The assassin hunters could arrest the assassins on false charges, and maybe they just happen to suffer a quote-unquote accident in prison. An assassin is in court and is about to be set free. Suddenly, the judge presiding over the case receives a mysterious payment the day before the verdict. Oh, this assassin ally, he was a businessman who was very effective. Oh wait, what are these letters that suddenly appeared? He's corrupt, immoral, and in middle of a huge scandal. He needs to be arrested. This business was working with Edward Kenway. Let's freeze their account and confiscate all their land. We can kind of see the difference between these two purges. In the colonies, the Templars could get away with open violence under the cover of war. But in Britain, where there was relative peace and order, they couldn't just murder assassins in broad daylight and chalk it up to conflict. Instead, they'd likely rely on spies, saboteurs, blackmail, and manipulation of the legal and political systems to take down this brotherhood. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this video. Do you think this time period should be explored? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, or if you have anything to add, or if I missed or glossed over something important, be sure to let me know. With all that being said, thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day.